the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Please be seated. Well, in the past we have talked considerably about the spiritual plane. Talked about several considerations about the Holy Eucharist, what it means to us. And I thought today we really ought to talk about you. And we talk sometimes in these terms, and priests love to do that. If you've ever known someone that just graduated from graduate school, particularly graduate school, they've had to memorize a whole new vocabulary for 2 years. And then it takes them 2 years to unlearn all of that vocabulary that nobody else can understand except the professors that they were with. And it's kind of an interesting thing to find when you first speak to these individuals, they'll be using, and it's called parsimony, which is the beauty of shortness to provide information. So if I use a term, I don't have to use 3 sentences. Of course, you've never heard the term. So now I've got to use 3 or 4 more sentences to explain the term I just shared with you. The question for us today is, how do we explain who we are? You don't go to graduate school for that. You don't have to learn a new language for that. But I think sometimes we have a very bad opinion of human beings. I really think that Christians, sometimes in particular, are some of the most negative people about what's happening in the world. Now, in many cases, we have a right to do that because we see things that are happening. But let me share a conundrum. There's one of those words. A problem, one that's difficult to figure out. Let me give you an example. Let's start with a base example of what human beings might think. And then let's work back to what Jesus Christ wants you to think. Let me use the example of July 3rd, 1884. 4 English sailors on board a yacht, the Minuet, encountered a terrible, terrible storm in the Atlantic Ocean. The yacht sank, leaving them stranded on a tiny wooden lifeboat. They had little food, no water. They had, by the 8th day of trip, they were desperate. They needed to do something. And they made a fateful decision on that day. I guess my question to you in a minute would be, what would you decide on that day? See, there was a cabin boy with them. He'd already been drinking seawater for the whole day. He was going to die. He'd been drinking seawater. He was very sick. For 4 more days, if you will, they made the decision that since he was sick, they decided that he was expendable. They needed to have nourishment. I'm not going to talk in any more gross terms than that, but they needed nourishment. So they decided that they would deal with the cabin boy. They thought, here's a cabin boy. We have families. He does not. He is already sick. He may die before we are found. We may die of starvation before he dies. Well, when they returned to England and the story broke of what they did, it scandalized the entire nation at that time in 1884. The survivors were put on trial and charged with murder. And one sailor turned state's witness. You've heard those terms before here. 2 others went to trial and freely confessed that they had killed and consumed their crewmate. They claimed they had done so out of necessity. I wonder, if you were the judge in that trial, what would you do? How would you react? After all, the story leads to 2 possible conclusions, I think. One is purely practical. 1 person was killed, but 3 survived. That's how you hear those without any Christian background. That's how they would rationalize it, correct? For the good of the most, you deal with the least. Well, 3 will survive, so what's 1 cabin boy? He doesn't have a family, and he was sick anyway. And the cabin boy, unlike the older sailors, wouldn't leave too much of a mark by dying. I think very few of us would agree with that option, I hope. Rather, I suspect most of us would have a more instinctual reaction, wouldn't you? What those 3 sailors did was fundamentally wrong. And we're not talking superficial. fundamentally wrong because they violated the boy's rights, his dignity, his value. Did they have a right to destroy his dignity? Did they have a right to destroy his value? Well, I will tell you now that humanists in our Western society would say absolutely. For the good of the most, you take from the least. Whether it's a small-scale crime against humanity, the murder of a cabin boy under desperate circumstances, or a major one, like the Rwandan genocide, the killing of all the Christians in Africa, Stalin's Russia. What's a few million Russians when you get the good of the most, taking from the least? ISIS raping, and murdering across the Middle East. Most, if not all of us, would have the same reaction, I would hope. It is wrong, it is even evil to violate the dignity of another human being. And yet, I would suggest that we do it every day. We do it every day. You're not doing what the sailors did, you're not doing what Stalin did, but that's why we repeat from Scripture, one of the worst sins is gossip. We destroy people's dignity and their value with words. And as Shakespeare had said so long ago, that is the power of man, is the use of the verbal, the word. You can command nations with a word. You can win wars with a word. If you knew anything about our armored division in the Second World War, that was probably true. Patton was an interesting guy, and I'm sure that they followed him into the gates of, as he said, to do whatever needed to be done. Well, recognition of the inherent dignity and equality and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation, isn't it? It's the foundation of freedom. It's the foundation of justice. It's the foundation of peace. If we do not identify with the dignity and the value of any other human being, you just destroyed humanity. One person at a time. We're passionate about human rights, right? Christians should be. We award Nobel Prizes to those that we think say the best things or do the best things. But there is a fairly basic question that is sometimes overlooked. These rights, this dignity that human beings have, where does it come from? If we were to think about our Western culture, it would be from other human beings. Humanists believe that everything is relative. We can make a decision amongst us. And I like that old adage in a democracy, as opposed to a republic. If you have a bicycle, and the majority vote that they want to take your bicycle, guess what? They can take your bicycle. If the majority vote to take your dignity or your value, can they do that? Is it located in the relativity of a Western culture? I don't think so. Unfortunately, our Western culture, to many, is turning into its own religion, and that's a very scary thing. Unless we know the answer to the question, what is a human being? Now, you know the worst enemy for that question is yourself. The first person you dislike the most, guess who that is? Yourself. I don't care what you have done, what you were doing, or what you may do. God gives you dignity, value, and support, and forgiveness because He has that dignity that He's given you. Why does He forgive you no matter what you do? Because He has given you value and dignity. Other human beings like to take that away because we think that makes us stronger. If I have something over you, you know what? You don't have nothing over nobody. Only Christ does. So unless we know what a human being is, what a person is, we can't begin to address the bigger question. So, what would the Christian answer? What would be a Christian answer to all of this? Does Scripture offer us anything? In the very first book of the Bible, Genesis, you don't have to go very far. It's in the first book of, actually Genesis is the first book, but it's a series of letters. We read a short statement that is kind of mind-blowing to me in scope and importance. Quote, "Then God said, let us make humankind in our image. And you think you're worth nothing? He made you in His image. In our likeness, the Trinity, our likeness. And let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all of the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created humankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female, He created them. Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 26 to 27. This claim that human beings were made in the image of God, that we hear that you're in the image of Deus. Can you possibly think that you're not worth anything? That other people aren't worth anything? This is unique, by the way, to Christianity. No other religion has this belief. You will not find such a statement in the Quran anywhere. Or in the Bhagavad Gita. You won't find it there either. Believe me, I know. You're not going to find it there. Or in any other religious text. Only Christian scripture makes such a staggering claim about who you are. But this is not merely some theological idea that we like to play around with and teach each other, but one that is foundational for two reasons. It gives you value, and it determines your ethical relationship one to another. If you don't know Scripture, you have no ethics in your heart. All the instructions are there. I like that old statement that you find. You know, there is an instruction book. It's called the Bible. That's true. First, Bible teaching that human beings are made in the image of God provides a rock solid, I think, unshakable, objective foundation. I was about to say ontological, but you don't care about that. Foundation for your value and identity. According to the Bible, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about your race or gender or age or ability. It doesn't matter if you're what they used to call years ago a mongoloid child. That was a nasty thing to call somebody. Someone who has a genetic flaw of some kind. Even a flaw is a nasty thing to say about someone. Do you think God creates flawed people? Every one of us are created for a very specific purpose. And yet we're talking about disposing of those individuals because they cost us money. I didn't realize human beings were valued by cash. I thought that was rather interesting. According to the Bible, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you earn, what you've done, what your record is. You are made in the image of God and you have value. I don't care what you think. I just want you to think it differently. You have value. Tremendous value. Take this idea away and you're left with the question, how do you determine the value of a human life without that idea? If I'm a chemist, I'm going to take you down that road quickly. If I'm a chemist, perhaps I'll determine your worth by the value of the chemicals in your body. One of the ways I learned that quickly is that someone had said, do you know how heavy my mother is? Oh. No, she was cremated. You know how heavy she is? And I said, that's probably the urn. I said, no, she's heavy. She was a good woman. I said, I think when they get right down to it, it's still the same 5 pounds of chemicals. But if a chemist were to look at you, he would go, you're a bunch of chemicals. You're probably worth about $6.85. So don't go that way. You're not worth very much. A good $10 bill, I might buy 2 of you. You know, one half price in public. If I'm a psychologist, perhaps I'll determine your worth by your IQ. If you're a dummy, well, we just do away with it. Right? By the way, with the rest of us, if you have 140 IQ or higher, we'll probably do away with you too, but you scare us. It's a different thing. If I'm an anthropologist, perhaps I might look on how your community values you. How many friends do you have? Real friends, not the funny ones and fake ones on Facebook, but real friends. And access your value that way. If I'm a economist, perhaps I might look at your salary and say, we do that in the Western world. We really do that. We really honor people that make lots of cash. I've seen people go in awe. If they drive a Bentley, you know what? My Ford gets to the same place as a Bentley. I love the Bentley. I love a Rolls Royce. Who wouldn't? Does it make any difference? I just look at that and say, I like that he has that. I shouldn't say that. I like that she has that. And she's enjoying that. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not going to bow down to that. Your value is not derived from your chemicals, from your relationships, or your production. If we go that route, I'm sorry, we're all in deep. We're not going to make it. But I ask my atheist friends, if not by those ways, then how? There is only one place I know, only one worldview where you can truly locate your value. And that's in the biblical teaching about humans bearing the image of God. How can you not say that you have the greatest value in the universe next to the Trinity itself? You don't have to worry about your income. I mean, that's fine. Pay the bills, that's fine. But each of us are truly amazingly built. David Foster Wallace, if you don't know him, he's a Pulitzer Prize winner, or nominated, by the way. Postmodern novelist. I like that postmodern, pre-modern, modern. That's just something that academics like to throw around. Wrote something profound on this. He said, and I know it's a little long, but let me read this to you. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism. You believe that? There's no such thing. In the day-to-day world, there ain't no such thing. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what we worship. And an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or a spiritual type thing to worship is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. Is that not true? It will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you're tapped real meaning in your life, then you will never have enough. Did you ever notice those people? They're the ones that make so much money at the end of their life, they're totally empty because there's nothing in the mountaintop. Once you get there, ain't nothing there. You got all the cash in the world, you're an old geezer, you left family behind or never got married, whatever you did, and you have nothing. You never feel that you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your own body and beauty, which moms should always tell their daughters not to do. If you worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. You know, the funny thing about that is I've known a lot of young ladies throughout my life, some of them whom I thought were stunning, and they thought they were ugly. They really did. Well, my comment to them was, you're beautiful, revel in your beauty, but understand that it's only passing. And when the time aging starts to show, none of us have that, right? No aging. No aging. That's why we spend so much on, hope the guys are not going to say yes to this, on lipstick and you know, all of that stuff, and hair color. You know, mine, I don't have to, it's platinum blonde, it's always been that way. But you never feel, therefore, that you're beautiful anymore. And when in time that shows, you will die a million deaths before they finally throw you in the ground. Worship power. You will feel weak. You know, I'm afraid, you know the weakest people, the most fearful people in the world are the ones that are going after power. They're going after power because they feel inadequate. So they have to control other people to feel that they're in control. That's a weakness. That's a fear. Over others, and you have to make sure that you keep that at bay. Worship your intellect, being as smart as you possibly can, and you will end up feeling pretty stupid. Because guess what? There's always someone more smart than you. That's a terrible thing. I'm the smart guy, and all of a sudden you realize this guy could take you down in 10 seconds, and you're going, oh. So you're always feeling like you're stupid or a fraud. Always on the verge of being found out, and so on. These are all his words, not a little addition. So what is the solution? How can we deal with the fact that the mirror of our souls is kind of cracked, kind of broken, kind of distorted? Because that's what we did, not God. Well, the biblical theme of the image of God, which begins in Genesis, runs through the whole Bible, all through the New Testament. These words from the Apostle Paul tell us how to think about it. Colossians 1. Who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created, that are in heaven, that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones and dominions. Then he goes on and on. He's speaking about you. According to Scripture, Jesus Christ is the perfect image of God. Jesus Christ was and is God. Contrary to some of the leaders of the churches nowadays that say that he was only a man, he was fully man and fully God. But he came to earth to show us that the image of God is possible. He was the perfect image of God, and that's why we are told to be Christ-like by all of the writers of Scripture. We are remade and redeemed. Human beings are not just atoms, contrary to popular belief. We're not just matter. We are more than the stuff of which we are made, more than our economic production and all that. We are the image bearers of Christ. Tall, short, thick, thin, it doesn't matter. You are the perfect image of Christ. You are valued. You are personally valued above everything in the universe by God. If I ever hear you say something negative about yourself, I'm going to slap you. You are the best that's ever been created. We all make mistakes. We all have sins to have forgiven. But you know what? You're still in the image of God, and he has given you a way to correct that. So I would suggest to you that our family and friends, like I say, we always have Aunt Gertrude that we have a problem with. All of our family and friends, no matter what has happened, they have the greatest value in the universe. Let them know that. The only way to correct a pathway that may be kind of skewed is to let them know how glorious they actually are. Don't worry about teaching them in their heart. They already know. In the name of the Father, Son,